What is up, YouTube and all my fish keeping friends? How is everybody doing out there in fish tank land? Hope you guys are enjoying your Sunday morning. For most of you, it's morning. Microphone's a little close to my face. Hope you guys are doing good. Guys and gals, all my fish keeping friends, hope you guys are doing good. I'm chilling. I slept in. I've only been up for like an hour. Watched D's stream, made myself breakfast, tried some new, I give this thing for chorizo. I like to try chorizo from like around the world, and I have this, the Colombian stuff is a little odd. I try it a lot, different kinds of Colombian chorizo, and it's always just doesn't, it's either too weird, too greasy. I don't know. Anyways, had a nice breakfast, chorizo and eggs, and I forgot to buy coffee filters, so I'm drinking tea, really strong tea with coffee creamer, flavored coffee creamer. Let me check out the chat. Tampa Tom, I know he was in here first in the chat, bright and early, hanging out, counting the minutes. Today we're gonna be talking about quarantining in the aquarium fish keeping hobby. Such a very important thing. It's an essential thing. It's a difficult thing to talk about, I feel like, too, but so we'll get into it. Let's see. Tampa Tom is up in here. I have Rob Myers. How are you? Good to see you here as well. Mark Bell. Tiffany White. How are you? Welcome to the stream. Science Gal Aquatics. Candy. Hope you're doing well. The Cove. How are you? Haley. What's up? All right. So we'll get into this. But I hope you guys are having a good Sunday. Candy, thank you for posting the links. Or she's, I'm gonna have to start sending. I'm gonna have to start paying her for this. 22 of you hanging out on the stream. It's good to see you guys here. Anyways, hope you guys are enjoying your Sunday morning. I'm excited to be here. There's so many things going on. I've been really busy. I just got my RODI water back. I got like really clean water back, and I'm just trying to get everybody back to where they need to be. So that's been interesting. You guys know that I've been going through a little bit of a parasite with the tetra, with the imperial tetras that I brought back from Peru, and it's really unfortunate because, I mean, that's what you get for bringing fish out of the wild. This is something you're gonna have to deal with, and I've really never had to deal with anything stronger than levamisole. I've been lucky with that, but I finally got fenbendazole in, so I'm going to be doing this today with fenbendazole. But we had a little bit of a problem. Really should be making videos about some of this stuff, but I'm just kind of actually, you know, not messing with the camera when I'm trying. The fish come first, honestly, in some cases. So the other day, I went ahead and I treated the tank behind me, the Amazon biotope tank, 55 gallon. I treated it with levamisole. I'm sorry, with General Cure and salt. And there was an angelfish. One of the two angelfish was obviously a little weak and couldn't handle the salt, so I had a little bit of an issue with that. The angelfish was like, she was ready to die. You could tell she was like gasping for air down at the bottom, and as quickly as I could, you know, I pulled her out of the tank and I threw her into a tank of water with straight RODI water. Now I was obviously just trying to get her into some fresher water so that she could get an air stone on her, so that she could get some oxygen and she'd be okay. So a couple of things happened. For one, I shocked her with changing the pH from a really nice blackwater biotope tank that is full of botanicals and has a low pH, and I put her into a bath of water that had a higher pH, but she did get a lot more oxygen, and I was medicating her. But I stayed up with that fish. Now I've had this, you know, even go back even farther with this tangent off here, go back to the beginning. Both of these fish were rescues. I got them when they were like quarter silver dollar size from the fish store, and they were covered with ick. The fins were completely melted off, and it was one of them things where they actually gave it to me. They gave them to me. It was more of like, I told them, you know, if you don't give me these fish, you're gonna be scooping them out tomorrow. They're gonna be dead. Like, I'm gonna take them home and do what I can. And they were like, and they were like, okay, you can have them. And they gave them to me. So I brought the angelfish back, and I did a salt bath and a bunch of things, and I saved them, and they grew up and they ended up being opposite sex, and they ended up pairing off, and they've spawned like 5 or 6 times together. So as long as the water temperature is right, and as long as I'm feeding them like live foods like grindle worms and bloodworms and stuff like that, yeah, they're gonna spawn like every 2 weeks. So that's kind of the backstory, and then back to me throwing her into RODI water. I completely shocked her. I think that the combination of General Cure, and it was a little bit stronger dose of General Cure. I went a little heavy on the General Cure, and then I put marine salt in the tank as well. And I think she was weaker because everybody else seemed to be fine with this. It affected her slime coat, and and probably also putting her into a different pH, putting her into the RODI water. She like her fins completely melted back overnight. Like it was like her slime coat just sloughed off completely, and she was I'm gonna get demonetized. Naked. Like her slime coat was gone. And I felt really bad. I felt like it was totally my stupid mistake, really, in a way. I mean, there was a better way to handle that situation. Then again, I didn't know that she was really weak. She's probably weak from me getting her as a rescue in the first place. So anyway, so now she's in a quarantine tank. So that's why we're talking about quarantine tanks today. Mr. Science Geek, how are you? Good to see you here. Aquafunks Aquatics, welcome to the stream. Pamela, good to see you. William Jansen, how are you? Good to see you here. Patricia, I meant to say. Where is Priscilla? Amber, how are you? Good to see you here. She is so bad. I don't like to name fish. I'm sorry, Amber. I don't like to name fish. It's always like, to me, it's almost like bad luck when I name fish. So let's get back to this, just to kind of keep on topic just a little bit to get through the basics of this. So now she's in a quarantine tank. She first was in a large, like 30, half of a 55-gallon barrel cut in half, and I put her in there with RODI water, but I buffered that water when I put her in that water, just so it was a little bit softened up a little bit. And then I even added tannins and stuff and medicated her in there. It was like, at the point though, when the fins melt off, it's kind of like, it reminds me of plants. Like when a plant can go, it can happen the same kind of way with a fish, where it's just a total shock. And especially with, like, I've seen it happen many times with angelfish. And anyways, so her fins have like melted back to the basics, all because she's like a fancy fin angelfish. And anyways, she's okay. She's gonna make it. You can tell she's wants to live. You can tell when a fish has that energy, that will to live, that urge and that want to keep going. Anyway, so she's in a quarantine tank in the other room. The lights aren't even on in the kitchen yet. But she's doing good, and she's gonna go back into this tank eventually. I'm just afraid right now to treat her with fenbendazole. I just want to give her some time to heal before I treat her like I'm going to treat the rest of the tank. Anyways, back to just basically to quarantining. I mean, I think it's crazy. One thing that's just nuts about the hobby to start out with is when you think about one person getting their first fish tank, they're going to get that first fish tank, and they don't have a quarantine tank. So it's like that tank is the quarantine tank. And that's just how people have to look at it when you're just setting up your one tank. But I think once you have over like 5 to 10 aquariums, you should at least have 1 or 2 quarantine tanks. I have 3 quarantine tanks, and now they're all full right now. And that's the thing. That's what happens to one of them. I've got 2 killifish breeding in it now, spawning in it, and it's a spawning mob. So it's like, it's always nice to have spare tanks, of course, but there should always be like at least 1 or 2, 3. I know some people in this chat that like to have 5 or more. Obviously, if you got 100+ aquariums, realistically, to have a rack of like 10+ quarantine tanks that's totally realistic. I mean, I have a 10-gallon quarantine tank with 1 Coridora in it because it needs to be quarantined by itself, because it needs special parameters and special levels of medication. And then I got an angelfish in another quarantine tank, and then I've got the killifish spawning in another one. Okay, everybody, this angelfish. I think Amber already has a name for this fish already. Anyways, that's why she's rooting for this. She already has a name picked out for this fish, I think. Oh, Sharpies, Models and Aquatics. How are you? Daniel's Keeping Fish. How are you? Good to see you here. Dank Tanks. What's up, man? KG Cichlids. Right, exactly. Or is it just another tank? Well, yeah. I mean, holding tanks. Whatever you want to call it. But really, you should definitely have at least one or two. But I do see that it's a difficult situation for someone beginning in the hobby. Like, that's where the addiction, I think, begins even, is just the fact that you have to have that. You end up getting a quarantine tank on the side. It's a perfect excuse to get a second tank. And then it becomes a second tank. And then you have to get another quarantine tank to replace that quarantine tank that turned into a spawning tank for killifish. Anyways, I don't know how loud the music is. I don't know anymore. You probably can't even hear it, right? I don't know if you can hear me. Check. 1, 2, 3, check. Anyways, I have my camera set up over here on the... we'll just skip my stuff for a minute. Stuff. We'll go here. I'm gonna check out my yellow King Kongs for a second. My yellow King Kongs. These, I'd have to say, we'll continue on talking about quarantining. And if you guys have anything to say about it, I've got this computer set up in like grandpa mode over here with the text really big so that I can actually see it. Because obviously I need to have a separate computer in grandpa mode just for chat because I'm special. Anyways, these are my yellow King Kongs. And I'd have to say, if you want to get into caridina shrimp, this is probably one of the hardiest caridina shrimp to start with. I know from personal experience. But they are definitely, it's a very, very hardy one. And I've spoken to a lot of people and friends of mine that breed shrimp. And they're like, if you can kill a yellow King Kong caridina shrimp, you shouldn't be keeping caridina shrimp. Anyways, so obviously they're like cockroaches in this tank, and they're for sale. They're for sale on getgills.com. I got a store on GetGills. I'm definitely trying to get rid of some of these guys. I'm about to throw some orders up on Aquabid, just because like I need to thin out the tank, and I already have a second tank of them, and I'm really don't have room for a third tank yet, so I just need to sell some. Dan Slee's not up in here, but I know that he's gonna get some of the skeletons out of here. I'm picking out all the skeletons and the oddball ones, and he wants all those, so those are already sold. But if you want quality yellow King Kong hardy caridina shrimp, they are really nice actually. They're pretty tough, and you see they're buried females all over the place in there. But anyways, yeah, how many quarantine tanks do you guys have? Not to gloat or anything, I feel like I should have more, because I don't have any right now. Well, I mean, right now I don't have one spare because they're all being used. But that is exactly the reason why to have them. Especially like my situation that I just had with that, with the angelfish. If I had an open, like that tank that it's in now wasn't set up and cycled. That's another thing here too, is to keep in mind of having your tanks kind of actually cycled and ready to go. Because if I would have had a tank cycled and ready to go, already buffered with stuff, and not just straight RODI water right out of the barrel, things would have been different. I think that would have been a little bit of a less shock on the fins of the angelfish, because angelfish definitely require a little bit of a little lower pH, a little bit more of an acidic water, and it really helps. Those tannins and things actually help with the slime coat. And it's just the beneficial bacteria that's actually found in the mulm. Just all that stuff is involved in, in the creation of the slime coat of a fish. Anyways, I'm all zoning out on my music. I'm like, oh, that's a cute song. Anyways. Oh boy. Yes. How many fish? How many quarantine tanks do you guys have? Leslie, a 5 gallon. A 5 gallon. Okay, and that's another thing too that I like to catch on. There is, um, if a fish can handle it, I like to keep a fish in a smaller quarantine tank. Why? Because you save on medication. There is a drawback on that though, because the smaller the water column, the bigger the risk you have of having anything happening in there. But obviously, if you're medicating a fish and you have it under quarantine, you're going to be doing water changes and you're going to be watching the ammonia levels in the tank and whatnot. But the smaller the tank, the better, really. You know, I like to have small 5 and 10 gallon aquariums as quarantine tanks because you're using a half a teaspoon of medication on a 5 gallon. You know, typically, and generally in most medications, and even smaller. Like even if you had a 2.5 gallon aquarium, I mean, if we're talking about quarantining some endlers or guppies or killifish or a lot of small fish that's not going to necessarily hurt itself and freak out in a small aquarium like that, you can really save a lot of money on medication. But you're gonna have to do more water changes. That's definitely I would definitely recommend like daily water changes if you're like using a 2.5 gallon quarantine tank. You're gonna do daily water changes. Anyways, but that's just that's one of my tips is keep your quarantine tanks small if you can, whenever possible. Now with the angelfish, I was put in a position, and that's all I had set up. That's all I had available right there at the time, and she ended up in a 30-gallon grow out tub with straight RO water, and it was really sad to see like the slime coat. Like literally, I watched her until 3 o'clock in the morning, and she laid down on her side, and the power went out, and that's when I did that live stream. My last live stream is when I had a blackout in the middle of it, and I knew that she needed that air more than anything right now. Like everybody else would have been fine. But yes, Pamela, coffee. For sure. Coffee. I have tea this morning. I'm pretending like it's coffee. Shh, don't say anything. So I went to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was really, 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 really sad because I've had this fish for over 3 years, and I was really, 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 really sad. And I thought this fish was going to be dead in the morning. And I get up in the morning, and I go in there, and I look, because obviously that's the first thing I did, because that's what fish keepers do. And she was swimming around, so that was really awesome. She like pulled herself together, and she's swimming around. And when I see that in a fish, it's like, oh no, this fish wants to live. Like this fish wants to live. I mean, you can tell. I've been there. There's some fish that just like, they're done. They've given up. They're like, no, I'm gonna sit in this corner and just take my last breaths of air. I'm over. I'm done. I give up. But she was, I knew that she had this will to live, So anyways, so now she's in a 10-gallon aquarium, which is a little bit better size. I had to set that up really quick for her. And she's gonna stay in there for another day or so. I'm just gonna let her have her own space. But she's already starting to, you can see that her fins have kind of like, it's stopped where it's going to stop, and they're going to start healing, and they will grow back. Those fancy tails on the angelfish, it'll take months, but they will grow back. I'm just afraid that she's really, really weak, and I don't want to medicate her with everybody else. But literally, I have to film it today because the medication has to go in the tank. So I'm going to do a little video today to add to my series on medications with fenbendazole, and I'm going to do some portions of that. I got it here in a 3-gram. It's 3 4-gram pouches. Just like a lot of other fish medications, the recommended dosage. Now this is the 22% fenbendazole, which is pretty standard as well in the dog world because this is actually branded and marketed as a dog dewormer. 1 gram is good for 10 gallons. So I'm going to put 5 grams in the 55, obviously. So, but that'll happen. I'm gonna treat that tank really, really soon. I went in there last night. That's pretty much the end of this story of my situation. Is I went in last night and I got out all of the Imperial Tetras that had the parasites visibly on them, which was 4 of them, and I put them into another tub. So that's actually a 4th quarantine that I have going on right behind me, and they're gonna stay in there with air until I can move the female angelfish back into this tank. It's a juggling thing, and I want it to be over because I'm not playing with parasites like that. Like, I'm not touching any of my other tanks while I do that as well. It's another thing to keep in mind with quarantining. Obviously, you have all your own separate hoses, separate nets. Like, literally label your nets. Some people will use zip ties or whatever. You could literally use fingernail polish, paint them different colors. There's all different kinds of ways to like label your nets if you need to, but they shouldn't even be in the same area, to be completely honest. I try to keep that stuff completely separate, so I don't just drop a nasty net, even touch another net. Anyways. And that's just to keep things clean. I mean, and I think that cleanliness is so important. It's right next to, having a quarantine tank. It's part of the whole thing. He definitely, Dean had given me advice once, and he said it to other people. He said it, I think, on one of Corey's live streams as well. Just take 10 minutes a day, just like good, keeping anything healthy, just take 10 minutes a day to just organize your fish room. If you take 10 minutes, which doesn't seem like, it's just like exercise. If you just do 10 minutes of core exercise a day, 10 minutes of a core exercise every freaking morning, you'd be buff. And that's like it. 10 minutes of your day. Anyways, sorry, that's my rant. But 10 minutes to just clean your fish room, organize stuff. Organize your medications, make sure all your fish foods are good, make sure all the lids are on tight, and you didn't forget something, leave something open, and whatever. It's just I don't know, personal experience, stuff that I've gotten from personal experience. But Pamela says it's 77 degrees. That's not bad. That's not bad. It's funny how it turns so quickly too with everybody when the seasons change. Now everybody was crying just a couple months ago about how cold it was in the snow, and now everybody's crying about how hot it is. And it just stays the same here. It just stays the same. So I don't have much to complain about. The rain, you can complain that it's dry and there is no rain, and then when it does rain a lot, then we complain about that. That's pretty much that's what we get to complain about around here. Mr. Science Geek. Oh boy. So, I don't know. I didn't see anybody tell me how many quarantine tanks they have. Nobody wants to admit that they have one and that's turned into a new tank. No, it's exactly where I'm at right now. But another awesome thing that she's not Ginger Graves. I didn't see her in here today, but I'm kind of bummed today. That's why I slept in. I'm totally being a lazy person today, because I was bummed because I was supposed to go to Home Depot today on the Big Island and get my new rack, which is gonna go in the kitchen and replace a rack that I have in there now. And so I was just really bummed that I could not go get that today. I'm going to be getting that on Tuesday, it looks like. And I have a friend that owes me a favor, and they have a truck, so that's going to work out very well. So I look forward to that. That's going to be another juggle of draining all the tanks, moving everything, but it's going to be exciting and fun too. My plan is to also incorporate some plumbing when I do it. Before I just put all the tanks back, I want to get some plumbing in place, even if it's not even complete. I do want to get some plumbing back there in regards to some water lines. My goal is to make To me, what keeps the hobby fun is to keep it fun. I don't know, to not make it hard work. So for me, when it comes to water changes, I'd really love to have it so that I can, one way or the other, pump water out. I have a waste out for the house, so I can actually get stuff out. But I want to be able to pump the waste out so I don't have to run 10-gallon buckets to the bathroom. And then have water pumped across the ceiling. I don't care what it looks like on the ceiling because you can't even see that on camera anyways. So I'm gonna have water lines running across the ceiling. That irrigation line is what I'll use with like the compression fittings, with the barb fittings, like the shark bite fittings or something like that. And I will run water lines across the room and back here behind all these tanks, and I'll be able to basically use a gravel vac, just like a hose, just for that tank. I literally have a hose for each tank, and then go ahead and put it in there, drop it into like the 2-inch line on the side of the rack, bam, and go down to the floor, and then it's gonna get pumped out. The key is I have to create a sump that's very low to the floor because I have tanks on the floor. So if it's gravity fed to the sump anyways, it needs to be very, very small and low to the floor, and I'll only be able to do like a 50% water change with the bottom tanks with it. Anyways, it's all a plumbing thing. Everything's got to go downhill. And then I can have like a float switch with a little pump, and it'll pump it up and then out of the drain, which I've seen a lot of people do. So that's the end. That's like the hardest part, is getting the waste out and plumbing that around the house uninvasively. Anyways, let's check out the chat. What is it? Sharpie said that he only has one one plastic quarantine tank. Hey, shoe boxes work too. I've seen a lot of people in a pinch use those plastic shoe boxes. I mean, that's really popular in the killifish hobby. Breeding killifish is using those plastic shoe boxes. Let's see. This music is like really chill. Like I'm about to pass out myself. Okay. Amber has 6 quarantine tanks and set up a tub. Yeah, I can set up tubs. Yeah. Yeah, I always try to keep like, even I'm using some of them right now, but I keep the white food grade 5-gallon buckets around, and that can always be a super fast quarantine tank if you need to, you know, throw it up there and put an air stone on it. Another thing that I would say to have, which I have, and with all my piles of stuff, and I couldn't find it in a pinch. I couldn't find it when the power went out, but a battery powered air pump. Especially if you're in a situation and it's just one fish or one tank that you're trying to deal with, having a little like 2D battery or 2C battery, little battery powered air pump with a nice air stone on it, it's always nice to just have that on the side for emergencies. And you could take that with a 5-gallon bucket, bam, you've got an emergency deal. They even sell that stuff on Amazon. They sell it like for fishing because people will, you know, keep their you know, bait fish or whatever in a 5-gallon bucket to go fishing. So you can find that kind of setup. Like they even have like a professionally made setup with a built-in air pump and battery, like into the lid and stuff like that. But you can make it yourself, that's for sure. Let's see. What else was I going to talk about in regards to quarantining? Really didn't even create a list or anything. I'm winging it today. Completely winging it just a little bit. Trying to film more, but really to film for me, it takes writing, and that's what I've learned about content. To make really good content, unless you're just a genius, it ends up having to be on paper first. I mean, and been doing a lot of content, online content as my day job, writing for Facebook pages and websites, writing articles and stuff, and I just kind of have Started to have this realization that it's all the same thing. It all comes down to writing, and it all comes down to a story. Really, people want a story, and people want, you know, it just you turn on the camera, you don't have anything organized, and it definitely you can tell the difference. And you waste a lot of film. You got to cut a lot of stuff out. That's for sure. I've seen those little USB pumps, and for a while I was like, what's the point of that? If the power goes out, what is that going to do you? And I get it. I mean, as long as you have like one of these, or you got a couple of these battery backups, you can plug that baby in and charge it up. A lot of them now, they've got them where they're solar powered, so you could have like a solar powered battery backup like this, plug it into that, and that would work the same way. So yeah, those little USB air pumps are pretty nice to have, and they're super duper cheap. I mean, Corey's got them on his website. They're all over Amazon. I think I actually have one. I have one in my Amazon store. So if you want to support me, you can go buy it off of my Amazon store. I put together a little store for the fun of it on Amazon just because they sent me an email and offered it to me. They realized I was a content creator, and they're like, hey, we got this content. They kind of try to create something specifically for, like, they're trying to work with YouTube. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll make a little, like, I guess it's called an influencers account, which is basically an Amazon affiliate account for influencers. So I went in there and I kind of went through my old shopping lists and things that I've bought and stuff, and put a lot of stuff on there that I've actually purchased, things that I've had to get from Amazon. Living on the islands, most of my stuff comes off of Amazon. Candy, you are so awesome. I'm like thinking I need to just put that in the chat, and she rocks. Killing it. Thank you so much, Candy. I appreciate that. Kim Fisher, how are you? Welcome to the stream. Not Nola Jane. What is up? Hope everybody's got their coffee. Supplementing today. But they say that tea has more caffeine than coffee, right? That's what they say. I don't know. It's doing the job. I'm all jittery. I'm wiggling around over here. I don't need coffee. I need Ritalin. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So yes, I'm really stoked about this rack. It'll be coming on Tuesday. We'll get this going. I'll have a lot more room. I've really just been going through stuff and organizing. I know you know. A lot of you out there that have a bunch of tanks, you end up with stuff. You end up with like stuff. And if you do have an empty tank, it ends up full of stuff. And I've really just been trying to go through all that stuff. It's hard to throw it away though, right? You know, you got some of that fish keeping spare parts and pieces and this and that, and it's hard to throw it away. You know, you just want to send it to somebody else, and that's kind of what I have to do with some of it. Like, I've got heaters. When I got all these tanks behind me, I bought them off of Amazon, Marineland 20-gallon kits for $120 a piece. Yes, I paid $120 a piece for those aquariums. Fish keeping is a rich man's hobby in the Caribbean. No. 120 gallons for those 20-gallon Marinelands, but they came with these heaters. So I got these heaters, and I'm like going through all this old stuff, just trying to throw stuff out and make space. I'm like, it's hard to throw away brand new wrapped up heaters. They're nothing special. They're like 20 watt, 15, 20 watt. I don't know. They're like the cheapies that they probably would cook your fish. Who knows? But you know, I have stuff like that, and I just trying to get rid of stuff. Really trying to clean it out, and just have to say goodbye to some things. There will be some things I guess I could do giveaways, but most of it's just plastic stuff. Like, the shipping would be more expensive than the stuff, you know. I threw away a bunch of airline hose that was just like old and like almost dry rotted. Just like, no, this is not. I am not using this. It's going in the garbage. That was hard to do, but I knew that there was no reason to keep it. It was bad stuff. Who knows what's in it? Who knows what's grown in those lines? Let's see. I'm trying to keep my eye on the chat, you guys. Candy, thank you again for throwing out the chats there, the Get Gills. Yeah, if anybody's interested in these yellow King Kong caridina shrimp, I'm definitely need to make some space. They're not bad. They're really hardy. Priscilla's not in here. Priscilla, I sent her some of them about a year ago, I guess. I'm sure she still has them. But with these shrimp, if you put leaf litter in a tank, buffered substrate, leaf litter, and whatnot, you have no problem. Now, the issue with this tank, we can get into this tank for a second. You see that it's got a bacteria bloom in here. And that is something that I just cannot kick in this aquarium, and it's in the substrate. So back when I put this rack together, I was all hyped up on the whole Dustin's, you know, dirted planted thing, and I was doing all these dirted tanks. So this is literally like organic potting soil capped with like painted black, the cheap painted black gravel from my local fish store, which has nothing but just the basics, right? So I was desperate to, you know, to set up the tank, and that's what I use. Anyways, so I tried when I put these shrimp in there. I didn't plan on them actually staying in here. I planned on, but they just went nuts, and this is what happened. But anyways, I added some fluval substrate to this as well, and the snails mixed everything up, and this fluval went down with the organic substrate, the like organic potting soil, and then I have the cap on top. But it's just in a substrate, and so I'm gonna keep these shrimp in this tank for a little bit longer. But my plan, I have another tank of them already, and there will be a third tank set up before I break this one down, but I want to break this down completely. I want this to be, you know, fluval stratum and eco-complete mixed. I just want to completely nuke this tank because I've had this bacteria bloom for ever. The shrimp don't care about it. It doesn't bother the shrimp. I've checked out the shrimp. You know, I like to take magnifying glass to my shrimp, and they're healthy. There's nothing on them. They're not bothered by it. Obviously, they breed like crazy in here. But these caridina shrimp can definitely take a little bit higher TDS. You can get them up over 200, and they'll be fine still, even though they need. So you could almost get away with keeping this caridina shrimp using tap water for people. You know, just I would say, especially if you have a buffered substrate and you just do like 20% water changes, you could get away with someone who has like a tap water that's like 200 parts per million. Yeah, they definitely like a little bit lower pH. That's why I would say going with some kind of a buffered substrate, no matter what. Now this, even the organic potting soil, even is buffering this too and lowering the pH. That's for sure. But, anyways, this tank is definitely gonna get broken down. I'm ready. I want this tank to come down. I want to rescape it because it's in my nice rack behind me, and I prefer for it to actually look nice. And I fought it for long enough, and everything I've tried to do, the only thing that works is like hitting it with a lot of salt, but the shrimp don't like that much salt. So the cove, yeah, I have 8.2 out of the tap. That's what I'm working with, 8.2 out of the tap. I'm gonna go ahead just for a minute for the fun of it, because I have been selling a few shirts. It's gonna show this first shirt that I should pull out of this file folder because it's not here anymore. You better believe it. That's not a betta because that's actually an oranda. So anyways, goldfish. So that, I don't know, I threw that together. I wasn't thinking. It was like probably 4 o'clock in the morning when I made that t-shirt. I went on a rampage and just came up with all kinds of really cool shirt ideas, like in a period of like 24 hours. I just geeked out on Teespring. But there's some really cool shirts here in relation to shrimp keeping and just fish keeping. I love guppies. That's a really cool shirt too. Some of these I want, but I just can't. I can't spend the money on. Fish nerd. That's one I think I am gonna get myself, because I'd like to have that. I'd like to wear that at like a show, like a convention. That'd be a fun one. Caridina University. There's people that I want to buy some of these shirts for too. That's for sure. Blackwater University. That's a fun shirt too. You know me and my Blackwater. Don Gallagher, how are you? Welcome to the stream. Kay, what's up? Good to see you here. Reels Tanks, I don't know if I said hi to you, but welcome to the stream, man. Dang Tanks, I wanted to see what you did with all my stones. And Reels Tanks, I wanted to see what you did with all the leaf litter. I like to see what people do and how they utilize the stuff, especially like the dried botanicals when I send people dried botanicals and stuff like that. I'm just curious what they do with them. Especially hardscape materials and stuff. It's like, I'm just curious, how did they scape the tank with it, you know? Like, if I send somebody a piece of, like, driftwood or something, I want to see a picture. Yes, pay for it. But I want to see a picture of what you did with it afterwards. That's pretty much that's where I need to get with my Patreon. I want to start utilizing my Patreon that way. So, like, if somebody gets a thing of dried botanicals from me, I'd love for them to like go into my Patreon and send me a picture of, you know, of their botanical of like their scape and what they did with it. I can't wait. This bottom tank down here is going to be scaped out really soon as a Blackwater biotope for wild betta fish. I'm really gotta get that going. Because I'm looking like a few months away before I get those fish, but I just want the tank to be well cycled before I get there, before the fish arrive, before the fish get there. The scones are okay. Okay, so I did see a picture or video. Dank Tanks, you sent me a picture or video with the first batch of stones, and then you had purchased some more like river rocks from me, and which are really nice, smooth, round rocks, all about like silver dollar size, quarter to silver dollar size for the most part. Actually, I sent them an assortment, and that was when you got the other ones, the second batch. I sent you an assortment with like 3 or 4 big ones, but you made like a little creek or a river with the first stones. But anyways, it looked really cool. I liked what you did with the first ones. I don't know why it blocked reels. Yeah. Yeah, definitely send me a picture. Send me a picture. You can definitely Facebook that if you're not Patreon. If you want to go ahead and Facebook it to me, you can always do that. Or well, Instagram doesn't let you send people pictures. That's the only thing about Instagram. Let's see here. Yes, Amber, Big City Betas. I will be sending you some dried botanicals. I'll get you some good stuff out. I have some really cool stuff for your toothpick fish. I have some really cool sticks and branches for your toothpick fish, and I have a whole bunch of almond leaves. I need to go ahead and get a little box out to you of that stuff. I couldn't send you enough almond leaves, I know that. So that's why I'm going to send you some other cool stuff instead. I'm working on a product. I'm really stoked about it. I've been working on it for a while, grinding away to just fine tune it and put it together properly. But I'm hoping soon to be able to release something to you guys, a nice addition to what I'm doing, something I'm really passionate about. So that's why I'm taking the time to really put this together. So we'll see what happens with that. That's all I can say about that. Yeah, something cool that's coming up that I'd like to be able to offer to you guys and make it possible for me to spread what I'm doing to more people as well, I guess. I'm really passionate about natural biotopes, and that's why I love Blackwater biotopes and brackish water biotopes, and the mix of the two. Just nature and the raw beauty of nature is what I love about this hobby. And a lot of times it's not about a bunch of green plants. I do love that too. I love to scape. I love plants. I have more species of plants than I do fish, and I love mosses and different kinds of bucephalandra, and you know, I geek out on all that stuff. But I definitely do love a beautiful blackwater biotope aquarium with an awesome bed of mulm and leaf litter, like literally a substrate of leaf litter. And I have that going on a couple of my tanks. Oh, that's something else. I don't have the lights on in there yet, and I'm not gonna mess with those. But I had an infusoria tank, which you guys have seen before. I made a video about it with my infusoria tank setup. And it's just a bed of banana leaves and almond leaves, and that's been developing slowly over I don't know, last 6 months. And I got a little wild hair the other night and I decided to put like 6 or 7 cherry shrimp that I have in the scape tank, this heavily planted tank at the bottom down there. And I went ahead and put those into that infusoria tank with all the leaf litter just to see what would happen. I knew what would happen. They would go crazy. And they did. They went nuts. It's, I'm almost have probably 100 cherry shrimp in there. And they're all little baby shrimplets, but all the females that I put in there, they just went right into action and just got buried right away and dropped shrimplets everywhere. And when I say buried, I mean buried in both ways. I'm buried with shrimplets, but they also love the leaf litter. And it's interesting to watch them in more of a natural biotope kind of situation. They disappear into the leaf litter for a while. They'll just take off, and then they'll go drop their shrimplets in the leaf litter. And you don't even see the shrimplets at first. And another thing too, with the colors of the leaf litter and red cherry shrimp, they actually blend in, like they're completely camouflaged in the leaf litter. But I don't think I'm gonna be able to let that tank go more than like 3 months. It's gonna be one of the things, like in 3 months, I'm gonna have hundreds, you know, of cherry shrimp in there, and I'm just gonna have, those are gonna be for sale too. I'm gonna have to totally almost break the whole tank down to get them out of there with all the leaf litter. It's not, you can't put a net in a tank that's up, you know. That's the problem too with like blackwater tanks. When you get a good blackwater tank and that mulm and that leaf litter is really developed, a lot of these tanks, a lot of these biotopes, you don't have a lot of flow in the first place either. But if you would put a net in there, you're just making a mess. You're gonna make a mess. I mean, they're beautiful the way they are, but you touch them, you touch that leaf litter, and you're gonna have mulm all over the place. The funny thing too, though, is it does settle pretty quickly. They're organic solids in the end, and they'll fall right back to within an hour or so. The tank is clear again. They're all settled back at the bottom. But I'm hooked. I'm hooked after watching fish spawn, watching killifish roll around in mulm. Like, you know, you see people set up killifish tanks with peat and stuff like that. And obviously, if you're trying to like do it on an industrial level, on a professional level, on a breeding level, maybe you go with those methods because you just grab peat out of a bag and you do it and it's done. But I love to keep it natural, and that's what I'm trying to do, is create a couple more tanks here once I get this rack set up that'll be just leaf litter tanks. More than a couple, but have some just open tanks that I can take and put 2 killifish in there and just let them do their thing in the mulm and in the leaf litter, and then pull the fish and let the fry grow up in that tank just the way it is. And then the fry can actually live off of all that infusoria. That's the other half of having a tank like that. And it always doubles as another quarantine tank. Everybody's saying hi to each other. Candy's throwing out the links. I really do appreciate that. I appreciate everybody hanging out. I think that the counter's stuck. I cannot believe that 43 of you are hanging out with me on this Sunday morning while I ramble about fish. The key to the day, though, is if you don't have a quarantine tank, you should have a quarantine tank, at least one. And I feel like if you have, you should at least have one. The thing too is about having more than one quarantine tank is when, say you had a situation where you've got different kinds of fish, like catfish can't take salt. You could have one fish in a tank that is more of a salt bath and has a certain level of salinity going on in it, and other medications. And then you, like I have right now, I have a Coridora in a separate quarantine tank because I can't put a bunch of salt in there, and I can't put like heavy doses of medications. I almost have to do half doses of medication with things like Corridoras and other kinds of catfish, because it will kill them. It'll suffocate them basically. Let me just go ahead and get rid of the t-shirts so I don't have to stare at those anymore. I was gonna move the camera one more good time. We could move the camera just one more time if I'm super fast and stealth about it. Boy, oh boy. Alright, let me see, 1 second. That works. That works. It's kind of off a little bit, but nothing's perfect. All right, you guys. Once again, though, I don't want to say thank you guys for hanging out with me. You guys, this is my fish club meeting without an auction or a swap or anything else. No, I appreciate you guys hanging out and just geeking out with me on this Sunday morning or afternoon, if it is that for you. I appreciate it. It's fun, and I appreciate all of you out there that actually take time and do a little bit of a stream here or then. It's, you know, here or there. It's nice to hang out and just chill out with you guys. Even Pamela's late night stream, that's a fun one every once in a while. If I don't say goodbye at the end, it's just because, and it's not to be rude. I thought about it the other day. I was like, that sounds rude when you say that, like you fell asleep in our live stream. It wasn't because it was boring. It's just late. Let me clarify that. And I just always end up like dozing off to it. So take it as a compliment. It's not that you put me to sleep. I think if anything, I might, people say that I would put people to sleep. So combination of this music. Where are you going, Haley? Who said you could leave? Where are you leaving? I've got 8 more minutes. You can't go anywhere. 6 more minutes. All right, let me go ahead and switch this over here. This is what I wanted you guys to see, really. I'm gonna check out my tank right here for a minute. In the last few minutes before I get out of here. This is my these are my leucistic guppies, and then I also have some cherry shrimp in here as well. And it's just my fun planted tank. That dwarf sage just goes nuts. I keep trimming it out, and I'm like, I can't throw that kind of stuff away, so it ends up in another tank. I have like a plant quarantine tank. That's another thing I have. I have a tank that I just quarantine plants. I did want to mention that before, because that's something that people forget as well. It's, you know, I don't just quarantine fish, I quarantine my plants too. And even just within my fish room, if I'm gonna take plants from one tank to another, they go to the quarantine tank first before they go there. And sometimes I'll even give them their own private bath, and I use hydrogen peroxide. Certain things cannot take a lot of hydrogen peroxide, but hydrogen peroxide is a great way to clean plants of snails. If you're trying to not take any hitchhikers into a tank and get some snails and stuff, if you take the plant and you quarantine it in a bath with a certain amount of hydrogen peroxide, and I'm talking about drops into like a glass of water. You don't want to do too much with certain plants. It will definitely melt them back. It'll just ruin the plant. It'll shock it and just melt the leaves. But yeah, I love hydrogen peroxide, and that's definitely one of the uses for it. But snails can't take it; it will kill snails with a certain, just when it's just high enough. So you can definitely, do a dip or soak for a little while with hydrogen peroxide, and it will kill all the snails on that plant before it goes into a new tank. But yeah, I have one tank that's like a plant quarantine tank, and like I just trimmed out of this tank the other day. I took a bunch of the dwarf sage that was spreading out through some of the other plants, just kind of taken over. And like I said, I can't flush stuff like that down the toilet, so I potted it in a little pot with some Eco-Complete and Fluval mix, and scooped out of another tank. And I put it into my quarantine tank, and it'll sit in there, and that tank does get medicated, so it also does have a chance of it gets a chance to settle in there, and I can observe it and see what's going on before I take it and move it to another tank, or I'll plant another tank with it, which would usually be a newscape or something. Could you quarantine? Are you some violent cat is asking me trick questions? Can I quarantine Substrate? Could you quarantine Substrate? Basically, could you sterilize Substrate? I've done things like that before, especially with inert substrate, like some fish tank gravel, where you can literally take and you can nuke the gravel. I've done that, like with hydrogen peroxide, where you do a heavy dose of hydrogen peroxide just to kill everything. I mean, you're gonna kill beneficial nitrifying bacteria as well, but your goal is to just nuke that gravel for whatever reason. And then the second half of doing something like that would be to take it and dry it out on something out in the sun. So by drying it, that's gonna kill some things, and then the UV light from the sun will also kill stuff. So between hydrogen peroxide, drying it in the sun, that's a good method for kind of trying to nuke Substrate. These active substrates though, especially like Fluval is like, Fluval is nice. I like the way the plants react to Fluval, but it definitely is like a lot of people, I don't like how it just turns to a powder at a certain point. It just starts to biodegrade and break down. Eco-Complete is really nice, and it makes it a lot easier to plant plants in it. The plants will stay down in Eco-Complete. It's a little bit more jagged, so it has a little bit more like structural integrity in the substrate. It holds together, whereas the Fluval is a bunch of little pebbles, and it's really light. To me, Eco-Complete's like right in the middle for price and value and the quality of the substrate. I think Eco-Complete is nice, and if nothing else, it's nice to add to a mix if you want to like mix your substrates. I like to mix. I like the stuff that I like how the plants like Fluval and how the shrimp like it. And same like ADA substrates and even the Brightwell substrates. They're really expensive, but they're really, really good, and the plants and the shrimp like it. But you got to water it down with something, and it's nice to water it down with something that's more of an aggregate that actually has like jagged edges. It really helps. Roots can attach to it. Really helps for plants to anchor themselves in the substrate. And it's not bad either. It's got a lot of nutrients in it as well. Weird music. What am I listening to? Anyways, we're at the last couple of minutes. Once again, I just want to say thank you guys for hanging out. You guys are my friends. Like we've talked about before, I got real friends in here. Like real friends, like real world friends. Not that the ones that I'm not going to get myself in all kinds of trouble. But, I mean, we've got Daryl Dimmer was in here. We got Haley. We got Pam. We got the Cove. I've met the Cove in person. It's a bunch of people in here that I've actually met. And yeah, that's the awesome thing about some of these conventions. It's really a really good chance to meet people, make new friends, hang out, geek out, share the hobby. Oh no, my iPad is gonna go wonky on me. It's freaking out. My iPad's I think the music's done. I think we're just gonna have to call it, because my cracked iPad, which I started my YouTube channel with, my first like 5 videos were made with it. It's got a cracked iPad, and yep, when it wants to freak out, it just starts doing all its own things. It's fast forwarding through a song, and I muted the wrong thing. Okay, no more music. We're done on the music. The iPad doesn't like me anymore. That's a first, but I knew that would come. The community is great. Priscilla, how are you? Welcome to the stream. Yeah, and Priscilla. Met Priscilla as well. Anyways, all my fish keeping friends, it's good that you guys are here. I appreciate it. Anyways, I'm starting to ramble. I'm losing it. I'm losing it because I'm watching my iPad over here. It's freaking out. It's like picking different songs and then fast forwarding them. It's just doing random things over here on the side, and I can see it in the peripheral vision. But I have no outro music as it is. That's gonna be the way it is. Stop freaking out. Maybe if I hit it a couple of times it'll stop. Nope, that just made it worse. Okay, never mind. All right, you guys. Well, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. I say go outside and enjoy it. It sounds like the weather is awesome in the States. People aren't crying about the cold weather anymore, so I'm so mean. I'm sorry. Anyways, you guys go outside, hang out with your family, go clean some fish tanks, go feed some fish, something like that. Anyways, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. I'm going to be putting a couple of videos out this week. I know last week was a rough one for me, but thank you guys. I appreciate all of the support. Dan Slee, I've got your shrimp here whenever you're ready for them. Anyways, you guys, take care. Enjoy your Sunday. And remember, guys, keep your tanks clean, your fish fed, and have fun.